a mixture too. They call it sugar of lead. If you drink the bootleg shine, you'll sure have an aching head. You
Hello everyone and welcome to another video on our own devices. I'm Jean Messier and today we're having a look at a type of device you might be familiar with if you've watched a lot of old slapstick comedies. These are what are known as soda siphons, and beyond being used to comedically soak hapless victims on screen, for nearly 100 years these were the principal means of producing, storing, and dispensing carbonated water. And the history and technology behind these is actually a lot more interesting than you might think, so let's dive right in. And yes, this is a remake of an older video. I have a video on a closely related topic coming out soon, and I thought this was the ideal opportunity to redo and revamp that older video. Now, the history of carbonated water, also known as mineral water, soda water, sparkling water, or seltzer, is a fascinating topic that I cover in much more detail in a video over on Today I Found Out, link in the description. But, very briefly, for centuries people flocked to spa towns like Niederselters in Germany, the origin of the word seltzer, to bathe in or drink their naturally effervescent spring waters, widely believed to have health-giving properties. However, it wasn't until the 1770s that English chemist Joseph Priestley discovered that this effervescence was caused by fixed air, aka carbon dioxide, and figured out how to artificially recreate this effect by generating CO2 using calcium carbonate and sulfuric acid and bubbling it through ordinary water. In 1772, he published a paper entitled Impregnating Water with Fixed Air, for which the Royal Society awarded him the Copley Medal. A huge industry for artificial soda water soon sprang up, with the first large-scale carbonation and bottling plants being built in the 1780s by English apothecary Thomas Henry and German-Swiss watchmaker Jakob Schweppes, whose namesake company still operates to this day. Anyway, for the next 50 years, soda water was mainly manufactured in large plants and sold in glass or stoneware bottles, which couldn't be resealed after opening, meaning that their contents inevitably went flat. Now, the technology behind this bottling process is something I will be covering in my next video, so definitely stay tuned for that. However, in 1813, English inventor Charles Plinth invented the Plinth portable fountain, which allowed carbonated water to be dispensed from the bottle while sealing it off, allowing the carbonation to be preserved. He also invented a portable carbonation cart that allowed him to deliver soda water to bars, restaurants, and other clients all around London. Then, in 1829, French inventor Victor Duhafal came up with a hollow corkscrew that could be threaded through the cork of a soda water bottle and used to dispense the contents without the rest of it going flat. He followed this up with another design for a purpose-built portable soda generator and dispenser he called the Gasogenes. This comprised a thick glass bottle with a cap from which two dip tubes extended downwards. One tube was connected to a twist valve and a cylinder of compressed carbon dioxide, while the other was connected to a spring-loaded valve and a dispensing spout. Over the following century, minor improvements to the design of soda siphons and the machines used to fill them were developed by various inventors, including John Matthews, Alphonse Quantin, A.D. Schnackenberg, Thomas Piemer, James W. Tufts, Herman Hansen, William G., and William Clark. From this point on, portable soda siphons grew rapidly in popularity, becoming the preferred means of creating and dispensing soda water in restaurants and bars. This, in turn, spurred the rise of the flavored soft drink industry. In the early days, soft drink manufacturers like Coca-Cola didn't sell pre-mixed bottled drinks. Rather, they sold concentrated flavored syrup to soda fountains, typically located in drugstores where an attendant or soda jerk would mix it with soda water from a siphon. This is still the process used in automatic soda fountains. When you push your cup up to the spigot, the machine carbonates tap water using a tank of carbon dioxide, then mixes it with flavored syrup stored in bags before dispensing it. As a result, nearly every major soft drink company in the early to mid-20th century, including Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Dr. Pepper, Orange Crush, and Moxie, produced its own branded soda siphons. Plain soda water was also very popular since it typically cost only 2 cents a glass, and this led to the slang expression, 2 cents plain. Right, so let's finally have a closer look at these soda siphons and let me show you how they work. This one is a Model D manufactured by Sparklets Limited of London and New York between 1934 and 1955 and was one of the most popular siphons ever produced. As you can see, the main body is made of very thick glass wrapped in steel mesh to withstand up to 160 psi or 1100 kilopascals of pressure. Most siphon manufacturers use bottles manufactured in what is now the Czech Republic, and you can see the words made in Czechoslovakia acid etched on the bottom. And underneath the mesh, you can see the red line indicating the maximum fill level for the water. The head assembly threads off, and on the collar beneath we can see the words "Made in England" and "Do not fill above red line." Extending down from the head assembly is a glass dip tube, which both conveys the carbon dioxide into the water and the carbonated water out through the dispensing spout. Now you'll notice the end is capped with a metal baffle. This was patented in 1937 by William Brewer and is intended to protect the bottle against the formation of solid carbon dioxide. If the compressed carbon dioxide from the reservoir expands too rapidly down the dip tube, it can cool and solidify, forming dry ice. If this then contacts the bottom of the bottle, it could potentially weaken it, leaking to cracks and ruptures. The baffle prevents this by diverting any dry ice sideways away from the glass. Also on our head assembly, we have a dispensing spout, a spring-loaded dispensing valve, and the attachment for our carbon dioxide source, which when not in use is covered by this protective cap with a retaining chain. So when first introduced, Sparklets siphons were highly innovative due to their carbon dioxide source. See, early siphons were charged at the factory and delivered pre-filled to bars and restaurants, with empty siphons being left out to be collected and recharged, rather like a milk bottle exchange. Sparklets siphons, by contrast, charge from disposable carbon dioxide cylinders or bulbs known as sparklets, which I have a box of here. These were loaded into a special holder, missing from this example, which was screwed down over this threaded boss. This forced the sealed end of the sparklet against a hollow needle, which pierced the seal and discharged the CO2 into the siphon. And you might recognize these as being very similar to the cartridges used in CO2-powered pellet and BB guns, such as the Powerlet sold by Crosman, and indeed the very first Crosman CO2-powered guns were designed to use 8-gram Sparklets cartridges designed for use in Soda Syphons. Then, in 1954, Crosman introduced a longer 12-gram Powerlet cartridge with the same diameter, allowing the old 8-gram cartridges to be used with a special spacer. This is still the standard design used today. Now, the sparklet itself was invented in 1899 by one Kenneth Murray, with the patent being assigned to Aerators Limited of Crayford, Kent, which was founded 3 years before. Now, the first siphons manufactured by Aerators Limited fed from an integral CO2 tank charged from an external source, but as soon as sparklets became available, they switched to that technology, with the first such siphons being exhibited at the 1900 Exposition Universelle in Paris. The company was renamed Sparklets Limited in 1919, and in 1920 was acquired by the British Oxygen Company, or BOC, which continued to manufacture and sell siphons under the Sparklets brand name. Now, over the next several decades, various improvements were made to the design of Sparklets cartridges and siphons. For example, in 1935, a circumferential depression was added to the cartridge body, which fit into a matching rib inside the holder, making it easier to align the seal with the puncturing needle. Sparklets were also used in dozens of other applications, such as inflating life preservers or pressurizing fire extinguishers. In 1932, Sparklets patented a handheld dental hygienator, which used a sparklet cartridge to spray a fine stream of water or CO2 into the patient's mouth, while in 1950 they introduced the cork ejector, a sparklets holder connected to a long needle that could be forced through a cork to extract it from the bottle. But for my money, the weirdest application was the sparklet apparatus patented in 1927 by British physician H. Whitridge Davies, which was a carbon dioxide inhaler intended for use in cases of drowning, asphyxiation, respiratory arrest, shock, and drug overdose. Now, if making somebody suffering from any of these conditions breathe carbon dioxide sounds a little bit suspect, you have to remember that around this time it was widely believed that breathing was regulated by the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the air. This theory, based on the work of Italian physiologist Angelo Mosso, led to the belief that most cases of respiratory distress, such as altitude sickness, were caused by a lack of CO2 in the blood, a condition termed acapnia. Furthermore, in 1920, American physiologist Yandel Henderson discovered that administering a mixture of 10% CO2 and oxygen to victims of carbon monoxide poisoning greatly speeded up the excretion of that gas and the recovery of the patient. Now, since carbon monoxide poisoning from illuminating or town gas was very common during this period, this spurred the widespread adoption of CO2-based resuscitation devices. However, by the 1950s, the physiology of respiration was better understood, and these devices largely disappeared. In a related development, American inventors Marshall Renneke and Henry Snelling of Food Devices Incorporated of New York City used principles similar to the Sparklet siphon to produce the first modern whipped cream dispenser, which used cartridges of nitrous oxide instead of CO2. This is still the standard commercial method for producing whipped cream. Now, the last bizarre application of sparklets that I want to mention is the radium bulb. See, as soon as radioactivity was discovered in the 1890s, all sorts of miraculous healing powers were ascribed to it. And so companies around the world capitalized on this craze by making all sorts of consumer products laced with radioactive isotopes, including radium. The radium bulb, patented in 1923, was a standard sparklet charged with radon gas, which was intended to reproduce the radon-laced waters produced by certain natural mineral springs. However, by the 1930s, the radium craze had largely died off, and in 1949, all such products were banned in the United States by the Radioactive Substances Act. And if you want to learn more about the wacky and often deadly consumer products that sprung out of this craze, I have a number of videos on the subject over on Today I Found Out. Now, while this Sparklets Model D here is missing its bulb holder, this siphon, thankfully, is not. This is a Merkuria manufactured by Czech firm Kovocas sometime in the late 1960s, early 1970s, and design-wise this is nearly identical to the Sparklets unit except for some sleeker mid-century styling and more plastic parts. So I have already pre-filled the body with water, so all I need to do is insert the Sparklets bulb into the holder, thread it down to charge the siphon, and press down the handle to dispense fresh soda water. Now, a distinct variety of soda siphon worth mentioning is the Gasogenes, developed in the 1880s. As the name implies, Gasogenes generated their own carbon dioxide by reacting a mixture of tartaric acid and sodium bicarbonate in an upper chamber, which was then passed through water contained in the lower chamber. And you literary enthusiasts out there might already be familiar with this device because it appears in several of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's stories as a prominent fixture of Sherlock Holmes' apartment at 221B Baker Street. Now, despite their ubiquity in the early 20th century, following the Second World War, the popularity of soda siphons decreased dramatically, and there were a number of reasons for this. Soda siphons consumed large amounts of glass and metal, and large numbers ended up being recycled in wartime scrap drives. Secondly, many siphon bottles were manufactured in Czechoslovakia and Austria, and these factories were largely destroyed by Allied bombing during the war. Finally, since the 1920s, pre-mixed bottled sodas had become increasingly popular, and by the end of the war had largely displaced the older soda fountain model. Nonetheless, a few manufacturers soldiered on, with Sparklets only ceasing large-scale production in 1981. The company still exists today as a subsidiary of Austrian manufacturer ISI GmbH and continues to produce small quantities of siphons for specialty markets. And of course, since everything old is new again, the basic principle of the soda siphon has recently made a comeback in the form of home carbonation machines like the SodaStream. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope you found that interesting. I have had these items in my collection and in my bar for quite some time, and I thought it would be interesting to look into the history and technology of these devices that, well, they show up in pop culture quite a bit, but nobody really talks about them anymore. Now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Another video where we'll look at yet more beverage-serving technology and other related devices just like these. Until then, I'm Jean Nestier from Our Own Devices. Have a great day.